Hello, my name is Jeroline Jackson, and you are watching the first episode of a brand new online series on this channel called Empire of Fantasy, Anime, and Sci-Fi. It's actually a love child of my 3 favorite topics. I am a huge nerd. Anybody who knows me knows that, but this is your first time meeting me and seeing my face, so welcome. I really appreciate all of you. So this channel is focusing really on 3 different genres of, I would say, nerddom. When you go into fantasy, anime, manga, and sci-fi. So we're going to be reviewing online series, movies, television shows, as well as books and manga, of course, because anime is the televised version of manga to actually sell the books. Fun fact, if you're not familiar. But we're gonna tackle all of those topics on this channel. But for this episode, our first episode, I'm actually gonna be doing a spoiler-filled review of The Witcher by Netflix, which is a brand new Netflix series. I highly recommend you watch it. Do not continue to watch this at this point. Stop what you're doing. Go to Netflix, watch it Netflix. Binge Netflix, love Netflix for this TV show that they produced. Some of them, not so much to love, but this one is definitely worth your time. Do not waste time being spoiled. It's really worth it, and the cast and the crew really worked hard on this, and it's a great story. I highly recommend you just go and watch it. So now that I'm done encouraging you to watch it, those who are stayed at this point, I'm assuming you have watched this film and you are ready to review it with me. Well, not film, online series, and you're ready to review it with me. So now that we're ready to toss a coin to your Witcher and ready to go and through this entire review, I'm excited to do this with you. So let's start off. I really like how the writing of this online series and the execution of it, the follow through is very clear. And I like how they seamlessly told a story that's at multiple different timelines, specifically 2 separate timelines, one in the past and one in the future. You could argue that each character has their own timeline, whereas, for example, Yennefer of Venderberg, who is played by Anya Chalotta, I hope I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, Anya Chalotta. Her, you would say, is the first in the beginning of the timeline if you're going to argue the 3 timelines. And then you have Henry Cavill, who plays Geralt of Rivia, which you could say is a little bit further into the future than Yennefer's at a certain point. And then you have Siri, or Cirilla, Princess of Ciria, who's played by Freya Allan, and that hers, you could say, is present and or future, as you can say is her timeline is basically the present, and Ciri's is really the present timeline. But if you're going through it and you're watching it, you could argue it's 2 separate timelines, and I do like this debate. I'm kind of on the bandwagon that it is 2 separate timelines. And if you go on that logic, then everything starts with Yennefer of Vengerberg. And then as the story begins with her, because of decisions that Yennefer makes, actually causes certain things to happen in Nilfgaarden, which it starts the uprising in Nilfgaard because she didn't go to Nilfgaard like she was supposed to be by the Brotherhood. And then when she made that choice, that started the rebellion in Nilfgaard. And then as you go down the timeline because of her choices, that starts the cascade that happens in the present, which is how Ciria gets destroyed. And then you get to Geralt of Rivia and his decision to help Ciri's parents get together and help defend her father. And so they become together. and they end up getting married. And then he goes and basically her father asked him, it's like, is there anything I could do to replay you? And then he was like, this law of surprise thing, like, I don't believe it, this law of surprise, which bites him in the ass, because he doesn't find out that, you find out immediately that Ciri's mother is pregnant with Ciri. So because of the law of surprise, now destiny has added Geralt and Ciri to come together. They're destined to interact with each other and to be a part of each other's lives. They are bound together as a result of the law of surprise that he just didn't believe in, because he doesn't believe in destiny. And we can go into that later. Which, again, because of that decision, creates Ciri, which is a character that I'll be honest, I have not played the games. I have not read the book series. I am immediately going to go to Barnes & Nobles and start buying books and reading up on them, so I can be more caught up in how Ciri is very intricate, because she seems to be the key to how Nilfgaard either will take over the continent. Fun fact, that is what, well, as you know, the continent is what they call this world. So it's not an actual continent. That's what the world is called in this universe. That is what the planet they live on is called the continent. So she seems to be the key for Nilfgaard to take over. And you don't know why. You know she's powerful and she has very strong magic, but you don't know why. And it's something that I definitely am going to go into the book series to figure out why. But I do like how they seamlessly did this storyline. So that's my first bit. Execution of this storyline is impeccable. It's very, very clear follow through, and the writing is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Now, let's dive a little bit deeper into the characters. So I'm going to start with Yennefer, since Yennefer is actually the beginning of the story. So Yennefer of Vegnaberg, who is a quarter elf, which is interesting how that might play on later on in the storyline, because she's such a powerful mage and basically one of the most powerful mages. Like the last scene where she basically Dracarys with her own hands the entire village. And again, people compare this to Game of Thrones. It's not comparable at all to Game of Thrones. I only mentioned the Dracarys because it's very similar, of just an explosion of fire and destruction on the village, on the Nilfgaardians who are attacking this fort, which, by the way, it's a shitty design of a fort. A fort on a bridge should be behind the bridge, not in front of the bridge, because the bridge is designed for you to basically forge the army that's trying to attack you into a very tiny corridor that you could just bombard with arrows. Whoever designed this fort is fucking stupid. It's a horrible, horrible design. It should have been behind the bridge, not in front of the bridge. But I digress. But her powers is something that we're going to see in the future, in the next season, which I'm very sad. It's in 2021. We have to wait so long, which is why I'm definitely going to catch up on the books and games. If you guys are interested in me doing a review of the books, of any particular books, let me know for the Witcher series, if you guys wanted to do that. But she is very much a character who you see her insecurities, even as she grows for hundreds of years. Like, she's been around for she's at least 200 to 300 years old. And the fact that she is still this kind of selfish, arrogant person in certain aspects, and you do feel for her, because she did lose something that she didn't realize at the time wasn't worth her beauty and that she gains. But at the same time, her personality is not really conducive to that of being a really nurturing mother figure. Like, let's start with beginning. So yes, she was abused, growing up in a pig pen, but the moment that she got out of that situation, she completely forgot where she came from. She completely forgot horrible the situation she was, she remembers in the sense of the pain and how negatively she feels, but there's no humility of that point that she has gotten the opportunity because of the skill set she has to really do some good for the continent. That doesn't click for her. What clicks for her is that now I'm out, now I can show these people that I'm not this girl from this pig pen. She doesn't really think of utilizing this power for good, which she, at the end of this storyline, is actually the redemption portion of her, that she actually does do that. She does use her powers and her skill set for good. So instead of trying to have her legacy go on in the form of a child, her legacy is going on in the form of her being a powerful mage who's actually using her talents and gifts to protect the continent and to protect the people of the continent. And I think that's a very redeeming arc for her. But other than that, there's, like, I love Yennefer, but she's a very complicated character, but there's certain aspects of her that I feel are, again, as Geralt says, it's kind of a kindness of her not being able to have children because their lifestyle is not conducive to a child. Neither one of them. That may seem shitty to say, but it's true. Her life as a mage is filled with people who don't really care about anybody but themselves. People who are in positions of power who abuse it, and her job as a mage is not necessarily to overthrow them, but to make sure, as she says, these kings who rape and murder stay in power. So that's not really the environment to raise children in, is to keep people in the state of chaos. And mentioning chaos is what they describe as magic. So chaos is how they conjure magic. It's the source. So chaos is the source, kind of what magic is. And it's very interesting how they discuss it, especially in the scene where Geralt is talking to the king of the elves when he is captured, and how they describe the fall of the elves, which is something that I hope they delve into in season 2. That was a really interesting topic. But back onto Yennefer, I think she's actually a great character. She's one of my, all of them I loved. I think Siri, if I was to rank them, was probably my least favorite character. But I love Yennefer. She's complex, and you can empathize with her because she has had a really, really shitty life, and she does have nurturing elements to her, but she is also a very selfish person and will really use any methods to benefit herself. That's what she cares about the most. So at least up until recently, now she has a motivation to progress and become a better person. So done with Yennefer, now to Geralt. Geralt of Rivia was very interesting. I love Henry Cavill's portrayal of him. And I'm not saying his portrayal of him when he's in the bathtub bathing, which we saw quite frequently on the show. I think there was at least 3 bath scenes, 3 to 4. I don't know how many times this man needs to bathe for us on camera, but Netflix felt like it was necessary, and I'm not going to argue with them about that. But Geralt of Rivia, his portrayal of that was actually really wonderful. In the sense, it reminds me very much of Leonard Nimoy's portrayal of Spock, is that this is a character who's supposed to be emotionless, but he's not really emotionless. He's not an emotionless person. He feels, he loves, he gets angry, but it's controlled. He controls it and almost is constantly putting people at a distance, similar to Leonard Nimoy's portrayal of Spock, as that it's somebody who's controlling their emotions and also putting on a front that I don't have emotions. And I operate in a very logical sense. I kill monsters, I get paid. I kill monsters, I get paid. That's all Geralt really is trying to stick to and not become this hero. And then he constantly gets pulled by destiny, which is a constant theme in this entire series, love it, of being this person who is really a very complex character, and you find out while I was watching this again, I didn't read the book series, I never played the game, so I didn't know that Geralt wasn't born a Witcher. And something you learn as you're watching the series is that Witchers are actually made. So there's actually people who are other Witchers, who basically you drop off your kid, which is you find out that his mom did, who was a witch, not witch, because they don't call sorceress in this universe witches, they call them sorceress. So his mother was a sorceress, and she basically leaves him abandoned on the side of the road, and then this man who is his mentor takes him to become a Witcher. And as through the process of becoming a Witcher, that's where his hair turns white, because you see when he's a kid, his brown hair and his eye color changes. So each Witcher actually doesn't look like the child they were. This is a product of mutation that happens over time, that happens as a result of the training and the scrutiny, which I hope they dive into again in season 2, which we unfortunately have to wait till 2021. Netflix, really, could you hurry that up? That would be nice, please. But I think he shows a great amount of range. And one other factor of Henry Cavill's performance is the fight scenes. His dedication to actually, I'm glad also Netflix and the production studio hired somebody who specialized in traditional sword fighting for Middle Ages, like how knights actually fought. Because if you look at how Henry Cavill is fighting and how the sword fights are in The Witcher, it's actually very, very much accurate of how actual knights used to fight in the Middle Ages and medieval times. So I really, really, really appreciate that, and it shows a lot of dedication, especially because he did all his fight scenes on his own. He really didn't use a stunt double. He did not use that. He did all his fights alone, so I thought that was really great. And he, being a fan of the series, he's actually a huge fan of the Witcher series. He played the games, read the books, so he dedicated himself to really portraying this character very accurately. So I really appreciate that. And now we're going into Siri, who is played by Freya Allen, who I didn't know was 18. She looks 10. Like, she legit looks like a child. And apparently the character is supposed to be like 2022. I didn't get that at all. She literally looked like 10-year-old. So I hope, at least in and I know they did that to make sure it portrays her more as a child, because she is the child of surprise. That's the result of the law of surprise. But I hope in season 2 that I don't look at her as like a 10-year-old anymore, because she legit looks 10, but she's actually like 20. So I hope they actually make her look like more of a adult woman in the next season. I don't know if they're going to try to play it as it's like a couple years in the future. I'm very curious of how they're going to portray her in the future series. But she was actually very interesting. I found her extremely entitled, which is understandable. She's a princess. But she's really oblivious and almost very, very cold, especially when she's interacting with the elven boy who is helping her. He's basically helping her, protecting her, and she gives no fucks about how her action really like affects him, like how she puts him in danger all the time and barely apologizes. Like, her apology is like more of a dismissive apology, and that because she's special and she's always been told she's special, she doesn't care how her actions affect other people, which I hope in a character, I guess she works with Geralt and most likely interacts with Yennefer, that changes, because that's a very, it's one aspect of her character that I really dislike, which is why I would say if I ranked of the 3 main characters, that she is my least favorite because of that. Also, I really, really want to see her use her powers. Like, we saw her one time, like, literally obliviate, like, these guys who were about to rape her. But I really want to see more of her power in season 2. That's my takeaway mostly of her going into season 2. And some humility. because yes, she is a princess and that does come with some entitlement, but she's a little much with that. Like, that was a little much. So off with the characters, the three main characters. Now going into the fight sequences. Ooh, yes. The fights in this series, amazing. All of them greatly choreographed. A lot of thought and interest went into it. Also, the world of this universe is beautiful, absolutely breathtaking. You got different, it really involves you, like when Yennefer is using her magic and you're being transported to different worlds, as Yennefer is running away from an assassin in that scene, to even the different creatures of this world, where you meet the golden dragon and the fawn, and it's just all these different elements of this world. They really did a great touch on putting it together, and it seems like the cast and the crew and everybody involved really had an understanding of this universe and how this was to be portrayed. And again, I really need people to stop comparing this to Game of Thrones. It's not comparable. Yes, they're both fantasy series, but they're not the same. They're not even similar. That's like comparing Game of Thrones to Lord of the Rings. You wouldn't compare Game of Thrones to Lord of the Rings. You shouldn't compare The Witcher to Game of Thrones. Now, you could argue, even though I just made that example, you could kind of argue that George R.R. Martin was inspired by Tolkien, which he was in certain aspects of Game of Thrones, but they're very different fantasy series. Just like The Witcher is very different from Game of Thrones, so they should not compare with each other at all. And I really, one last bit, really love how they incorporated all people of different races, ethnicities, and backgrounds very seamlessly into the storyline. It wasn't like, hey, we just put a black guy as a mage in this storyline. It was just everybody's interacting with each other. That's just how the continent is. And you get people of different color and they're just all interacting with each other very seamlessly. Nothing tension aroused with that. So I really appreciate how they incorporate that very seamlessly. So that's my spoiler-full review of The Witcher. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a comment about any questions you have, any thoughts you have about this show. If I ramble a little too much, anything of that nature, just leave a comment, and please click the subscribe. I don't know if I said that in the beginning. I should have. But definitely subscribe, hit that little bell button to get that notification so you can get notified for new uploads of this series. And thank you so much for watching. I really truly appreciate it and hope to see you next time.